So I want to welcome Terry Ibel on today. Am I saying your name correctly, Terry?
Yes, that's good. Terry Ibel.
Okay. So Terry runs the Animation Industry Podcast. He attends Sheridan College and has experience in both hand-drawn and stop-motion animation. So Terry has a great artistic eye, and many of his characters are quirky, appealing, and fun to watch come to life. You can find his podcast and much of his artwork, and it is at terryibel.com. So thanks for coming on today, Terry.
Well, thank you so much for asking me to come on. I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. So how did you get interested in the art of stop motion?
Oh gosh. I kind of just stumbled into it. So like way back when I was in grade school, my brother and I got my grandfather's old like camcorder and we just would just fool around and shoot videos on it and we discovered that if you press record and stop, it'll only take one frame as a picture. So we were like, oh, well, we can like move our Legos around with this. But we quickly discovered that it would take one frame, but then rewind it one frame and then take another frame if you did that. So we had to animate everything backwards and then you could like play it within the tiny viewfinder forward. So that's kind of how I stumbled into stop motion. And then ever since, I just kind of played around with it. My brother attended a different high school and started playing around with CG. He's now a CG animator and would enter the school film competitions with CG. And since I didn't know how to do CG, I would enter my school's film competitions with stop motion. And then we'd see each other in the regional film competition at like the local tiny cinema. So that's kind of where I fell in love with making short films with stop motion.
Wow, that's so cool. So did you use primarily clay figures, or did you make your own designs and make maybe like foam latex, or how did you make your characters?
Well, I was a like 12, 13, 14-year-old boy. I had zero money and no job. So it was this dollar store. Actually, I first started with clay that I got from our grade 8 art class where we had to like make characters out of plasticine. So I just took that home and then used that plasticine to just remold whatever I wanted. And then clay was so easy and cheap to animate and I could make whatever I wanted that I just went to the dollar store, bought a bunch. And then I've never actually worked with foam or latex. I worked with my first armature this past summer, which was really exciting. And also I learned how frustrating it can be also. It doesn't do what you want to do so simply.
Right, right. That's very true.
Yeah.
So now you do have a YouTube channel, and it's Terry Mation, which is TerryMation. That's the
Yeah.
channel name. So you have a lot of like 2D hand drawn stuff,
Yeah.
and then if you scroll down, there's a lot of like stop motion in there, and things like that. So did you start out with stop motion and then get into like 2D, or like how did you transition there?
The 2D stuff is only kind of by necessity because I'm in school right now for animation. So I only have ever done 2D stuff within the last year about now. Um, so I've only ever done stop motion as animation. So all those, I think when I was in high school and then when I graduated high school and started going to university, that's when I did all those for university for the first time. I have a business degree, just FYI. That's when
Oh,
I did all those stop motions, and I'm sure that I did between 50 and 60, maybe more. Not all of them are on my YouTube channel. I think a lot of them are just like on a hard drive, sitting in a box in my closet. But traditionally, I'd only ever done stop motion. I'm actually curious how you found, because originally I asked you to be on my podcast, and now you're asking me to be on your podcast. But you
yes.
already knew of me as I knew of you. So when did you first hear or see my stuff?
You know, I saw your stuff on YouTube a long time ago, some of your early clay work, and it just came up in my like suggested, side box there.
Yeah.
So I found you there, and of course, clicking through the links and such, I found your podcast.
Yeah.
So I found that, and then you've also got a network of social media accounts. So,
Mhm.
from there, it's kind of easy to find you once you find your website.
Right? Yeah. I've tried to make myself kind of public, but it's interesting that you found me so long ago because back in the day when YouTube was kind of starting up, I used to just sit for hours every night scouring YouTube for any stop motion I could ever find, and it was so tough back then because there wasn't that much. So that's how I kind of found stopmotionanimation.com and animateclay.com and your stuff. So yeah, it's good to know that you found me a while ago too.
Yeah, I mean, it really is kind of a small world.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not so many people now making clay animation and stop motion. I mean, there are, but uh, it's almost like the kind of people you see on the internet. They've either made some giant accomplishment, or they
Mm,
just kind of dabbled in it, and it's kind
yeah.
of hard to find people that are work so hard at it, such as yourself, and are trying to really hone your skills. Um,
Yeah, well, I've never actually done it for pay. I've only ever done it for fun. It's funny that you say that there are less claymation and stop motion people. I think that's true with what I find on YouTube. But on Instagram, where I'm most active lately, it seems like everybody's kind of posting their work. Like all the people that work at Stupid Buddies and Leica and all those other studios in Portland now all have Instagram accounts. They're all showing off. They worked on Tumbleleaf or, I don't know, Robot
right.
Chicken or whatever. So there's a really like tight knit, still very tight knit, like but thriving community of stop motion people on Instagram, which is pretty interesting too because like I follow all these people who live and work in Portland and like have worked on like Kubo and the Two Strings and stuff, but they also follow me because it's such a small community versus like if you're into drawing, I don't know, comic book superheroes, like that's huge. Everybody does that. So you probably won't connect with people in the industry so easily.
That's true. Yeah, it's a lot easier to just like talk to somebody that works at Leica because they're so prominent on a social media account. It's
Yeah.
it's kind of nice. So let me ask you here. In terms of like your 2D animation that you're learning in college, I mean, has that helped
Mhm.
your stop motion in any way?
It's funny. I kind of started off strong, I guess strong comparatively in 2D right away because I feel like once you know the principles of animation, like your arcs and stuff like that, it really applies to any animation. Like if if you're doing a bouncing ball and you know that there should be some hang time and some squash and stretch and things like that. From doing that in stop motion when I was younger and like about 10 years ago now, it just I was kind of 2D animating while thinking in stop motion. So it helped me at
That's
the
interesting.
start, but actually became more difficult going forward because I learned stop motion animating, go straight ahead, like move it, then move it again without doing key poses or in betweens or anything, which is very important in 2D. So in 2D, if you have like a minute of animation, you will draw the key poses throughout that minute. So you might draw like, I don't know, 12 poses, and then you'll
Mm-hmm.
go back and fill in the in betweens, which is the frames between those poses. But in stop motion, you have to go straight ahead. So it's an entirely different way of thinking. So it was actually tougher for me in 2D going forward because I had to break what I knew about and felt comfortable animating with stop motion. So it's been interesting, but I also feel like they both play off each other, and I've learned things about stop motion that I apply to 2D and things about 2D that I apply to stop motion. For instance, I was working on a stop motion short film over the summer, and I have a little wizard man, and he jumps a couple times into the screen. And I probably redid the shot over like 4 days, like 10 different times, because every time I had him jump, even though I planned it out, when he was in the air, I would move him slightly too much, and then his landing place would be off where I wanted him. And so I was like
Mm.
ready to give up until I thought, why not like take a 2D approach type of thing? And I also talked to some stop motion animators as well to get their advice. And so I blocked it all in on Dragon Frame on the screen, and I actually like did the key poses on the screen, like kind of spaced out the in-betweens, and then I animated the wizard in real life while like lining him up to the poses and in-betweens on the screen, and then it worked out perfectly. So it was almost like double the work or double the planning up front, but the result was so much better. So yeah, I guess like I'm learning in both areas, but they're also helping each other.
That's very cool. So you're using Dragon Frame. Um,
Yeah.
so what you're saying is like you're doing what they call a pop through, I think.
Okay.
And so what you're doing is like taking an actual picture and then lining up the like making sort of in betweens in that way, or key
Well,
poses.
yeah. So I just held the puppet with my hand, um, instead of with the rigs and everything, just because I wanted to take the pictures in like 15 seconds, like everything. So I held the puppet with my hand where I thought he should be while lining him up on screen, and then there's like a little pen tool or pencil tool where you can actually draw within Dragon Frame on top of your pictures in the
Ah,
live view. So I would just draw, I want like 10 frames between this, so I just put little ticks
mm-hmm.
between those frames and say like there's a star on the wizard's body on his garbs, and I use that as my reference point. So like the tip of the star should be here in each frame, so that when I went to actually animate the scene for the real take, I knew exactly where he needed to be, I guess, in real life, so that it turned out that he's jumping properly and landing where he should be on the screen.
Very cool.
I hope that does that make sense?
No, it totally does.
Okay.
I mean, when we worked at John Lemon Films, we did a similar technique.
Yeah.
So we had like a 30-inch TV screen, and we used to use like dry erase markers and outline the characters in different
Yeah,
poses.
exactly. That's so funny that you actually like drew on the screen.
Yep, that's exactly what we did.
That is hilarious. Oh my gosh. Well, I mean like I could be an ad for Dragon Frame because I've never worked with any stop motion software before. When I was doing my claymations previously, I would actually just record like however long it took me. If it was a couple hours, I just record for a couple hours, and then I input that all that footage into the computer, and then I would take out specific stills that I wanted by just like screen capturing, and
Oh,
then like editing in like Paint, as before I like learned how to use Photoshop. So Dragon Frame, it has onion skin. You can like toggle back and forth between frames easily. It has like this little remote keypad that you can like use across the room. I know there's other softwares out there that also have all these skills. It's just for me, school has Dragon Frame, so this is just what I used for the first time, and it's amazing.
it is amazing, yeah. And I think Leica is using it. I think maybe Aardman Animation. So some of the bigger studios like it as well,
Mhm.
which is really cool.
Yeah. I also know there's like Stop Motion Pro and a couple other ones out there, and there's also some free apps too that I've heard of. I can't think of the names, but if like I talked to this guy named Ben Treat on Instagram, and he did 100 stop motion posts over 100 days, and he just films. He's 17 years old, and he just films everything on his phone, and edits it in his phone too. So it's like
Oh wow.
crazy how available stuff is for people who want to get into this.
Yeah, it's really nice. I mean, it's not like the when I was growing up and trying to get into it, they had like Super 8 cameras and 16 millimeter or 35, and that was your only option, you know.
Yeah.
So now it's like, everybody has a phone. A cheap camera for like, $50 on eBay can, do wonders for you. Free software for your PC. I mean, I don't know if you've ever heard of Heron Animation.
Heron
Uh,
animation?
Heron. It's a free program for your PC, and it's actually pretty good. It's a little bit buggy, but like I say, it is free, and you can do stop motion
Interesting.
with
Yeah, I
it.
haven't heard of it.
Yep. So I mean,
Oh,
really,
oh,
it's
you know what I have? Now that I see the logo, I have definitely seen this before. Yeah.
have you okay. But I mean, it's really cool now that like anybody can do it. It wasn't
Yeah, it
always
says
like
I'm
that.
just looking at the features. Connects to webcam, onion skinning, playback animation at any frames per second, looping, short play, delete, move frames. Seems like Like those, like for me, it's funny for me. Like onion skin was so revolutionary, and I was talking to an animator at Leica just yesterday, and he's like, "Oh, we never use onion skin. We just use the toggle back and forth, because it shows things more clearly." So, I guess it really depends on your workflow or what you like to do.
Wow. I mean, I love onion skin myself. I really can't think of any reason not to use it. I mean, it just seems like an advantage, but I guess everybody has their preferences.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I would not have suspected that they would not use onion skin. I mean, if I were a betting person.
I know, right?
But all right, so let me ask you this now. So most of your stop motion films use clay puppets.
Mhm.
Some that stand out are your Fish King takes in the short film that you made. So, do you have any plans to create future short films around these characters?
I do not. Part of what I
Yeah.
really enjoy about animation in stop motion specifically is like I can create a character like the Fish King, who's like one color of plasticine that I got from the dollar store. I think his hat is a different color and his eyes are so he's like greenish blue. His hat is blue, I think, and his eyes are black, and it's all made out of plasticine. I can create that in an hour, like the design, everything, come up with the idea, and it exists in its own little world. And then I can just move on to creating a completely different character, and it's like it's a standalone thing. So part of the fun for me is just making different characters and different scenarios and different worlds every single time. So I don't think I will ever revisit the Fish King unless I specifically have like a I don't know, like some nostalgic moment where I was like, I should see what else I should do with this character. But it's funny you say that one.
Right.
It's like it's one of my most popular videos, and it's the one that everybody kind of references when they think of my claymation, actually, which is interesting. Even coming into school, people are like, "Oh, you made that Fish King," and I was like, "Yeah." But it's weird to me because like I didn't put any more effort into that idea than the other 50 animations I did. So I don't know why some resonate with some people and some don't resonate so well.
Yeah, I
Um,
really loved it. So I mean,
yeah,
that's why it popped
okay.
out for me. I just liked it. I don't know.
Well, something else I'm kind of struggling with is like my animation has always really just been for myself. Like I haven't tried to think of an audience or create something I think other people like I haven't like tried to create something for an audience, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's weird to me like why some ideas stick with people and some just don't, you know?
Yeah, it's really hard to predict what people will like. I think that's probably one of the biggest problems that people have making films is
Yeah.
they try to make it for an audience, but like with your situation, it's like you make it for yourself, and it just clicks, and people enjoy it, and sometimes that's what sticks out for most people, which is
Yeah.
really a crazy thing.
Yeah. Well, one thing just because it's very recently in my mind, I actually published the episode with Ben Treat yesterday. He's the guy who did 100 stop motions on Instagram over 100 days, and he in the
Wow.
last couple of months he's gained like 13,000 followers. His thing is just he's just creating ideas for himself, but he's creating them in a way that he knows will appeal to like Instagram's algorithm. Like they're short, they're very simple. They focus on like colors and like objects, often fruit, because those are
Oh.
things that he noticed would like get come up in the search feed. So he's like purposely trying to create videos that appeal to like Instagram's algorithm because Instagram's algorithm tries to figure out what people like, right? But he's still
Yes.
doing it for his own enjoyment. You know what I mean? So it's been working out for him.
So
But
he's
that's
he's
just,
like
I guess, an
found.
interesting way of doing it.
Yeah, it's like he's found some sort of interesting balance there, which that is pretty tough to do. And
Yeah,
I mean, because it kind of limits you in a way, I would think, because you're sort of trying to steer the course depending on what the outcome of the number of likes or hits,
right.
you're
Yeah,
getting, as opposed to, maybe this is a good story or something, So, I mean, but still, that's pretty awesome, especially if
yeah.
you can be successful.
Well, to give you an example, like the one he posted his one yesterday, and it was his hand smashing a banana, and like the banana comes out of the peel and like floats away in a squiggly line, and that's it, right? Like it's very short.
Cool.
The background is like one like bright color, and it's just like something unexpected. So yeah, I don't know. It's like, for instance, I mentioned I've never done stop motion for pay. For me, that would be great to get into, and I'd love to do that. But I'm also terrified of doing that because stop motion is like such a personal like art passion for me that I'm afraid that if I have to do it for somebody else, I won't have that passion anymore. But that's just something I have to break.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really sure like how certain studios do that with advertisements and things because, I mean, some of the things that I really loved with Wolverton Studios were their advertisements, and
Yeah.
so I guess like if I were to work on advertisements at that studio like back in the 80s, I would have been in heaven. So I think maybe just finding the right clients is what it comes down to really because some people will want to steer you in their direction, but there's also some that will see your work and say, just have at it, and that's the kind of that would be the ultimate experience, I think.
Yeah, well, like Will Vinton, I think is like a rare instance of, kind of influencing advertisements where their style is so unique, and loved, right? So,
Yeah.
I don't know how you manufacture that intentionally, but I guess that's the dream is to make stuff that you want, and then people come to you seeking more of that, right?
That's pretty much how it worked out for them. Yeah, that's a really
Yeah.
good description of it. They just got very, very lucky,
Yeah, I mean, through my podcast, I talk to a lot of different people in different parts of the industry, like storyboarding, directing, claymation, animation, obviously. But when I talk to people on major motion films, they enjoy what they do, but they're making it like for the not for, but like the director and the producer have a specific vision in mind, and
Hmm.
obviously the producer is very tied to the finances, and the finances are very tied to what the audience wants. So even when you see like I don't know, like a major motion picture that you love, there's a lot of passion in it, but it's also playing towards what they're putting a lot of eggs in one basket with all the risks they're taking financially. So they want to make sure that it's going to be received well. So
Yeah.
I guess what I'm saying is like even when you see stuff you love, that there's like intentional. I don't know. I guess I'm tripping up over my own
Well,
thoughts.
no, I understand completely. I mean, there's like a formula that films
Yeah,
use. Like they'll have like if it's a successful first film, they'll have like part two, part three, four, five, six. Like how many Alien films have there been? There's like
right.
Alien,
Yeah,
Aliens, Alien versus Terminator, Alien versus Predator, whatever. And they keep churning them out. And it is limiting, and that's what I was kind of getting at with the algorithms with like
hmm
Instagram or those like YouTube and that kind of thing, where you're limited and like boxed in almost with these kind of
yeah,
formulaic strategies.
yeah. Well, it's like so I guess a little bit more backstory on me is I have a business degree. I have a career in marketing and SEO and analytics for the last 8 years. And something that I realize is at the end of the day, your career, you're doing stuff for other people so that you can get paid, right? So
Yeah.
you might as well be doing something that you love because every job becomes just a formula and a process at the end of the day. And even though I loved the business and marketing side of it, it wasn't my like internal passion, and like stop motion and animation and telling stories is that thing. So in my mind, even if I am telling stories for other people in a way that maybe you could say the creativity is killed or something like that, that's like 1,000 times more what I'm passionate about rather than like business. You know what I mean?
Right,
So
sitting
that's
at a
why I'm
desk.
going to school to get into this industry. That's why I started the podcast, etc.
Yeah, that's totally cool. I mean, it is a compromise. I mean, there's financial interests and algorithmic interests and all that kind of stuff, and so yeah, it's never going to be a perfect utopia for anybody, But I think if you can get closer to, at least enjoying your life doing something creative and having fun, it can only be better,
Yeah, I agree. Well, and I look at people like you, and I'm fascinated by, you've been sculpting for your whole career, and through all the challenges of that, you're still doing it and still loving it, and I find that amazing because I look at my past and I like gave up on what I loved for a very long time because I didn't really believe I could do something with it. So I think that's really great that you've done this, especially now that you have this community and this podcast and your website and you're still working on things. That's great.
Yeah, I'm definitely very lucky, for sure. And I've got great clients and that kind of thing, so it really helps. And a pretty good reputation, luckily. I haven't messed up too bad.
Yeah. Well, we'll dig into your dirt in my next episode. No, but
Don't bring up the
no, but
scandals.
I find that that's also one of the main reasons I started this podcast, just to hear the stories of people like you, because I find them fascinating, and it's just like I was so opposed and had like so many mental barriers to even doing animation because I didn't think it was viable. And then to learn that like people like yourself have been, making a career out of it and doing a lot of great things over time. It's just, I love that. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, well, thanks. So
Yeah,
let's get back to you now.
sure.
So you do attend Sheridan College.
Yeah.
So can you tell us all a little bit about like what you're learning in there and
Sure. So I started attending Sheridan College in last September, which would be September 2018. And Sheridan is one of the big animation schools. There's like Cal Arts in the States. There's Gobelin in France. There's Sheridan in Canada. And then there's other animation schools too. So Sheridan just happens to be near Toronto where I live.
Mhm.
And I knew a lot of people, once I started talking to people in the industry, I knew a lot of people said a lot of high they talked about Sheridan very highly and said I should go. So I've been there for a year now, and basically Sheridan is set up. It's pretty like the guidelines to get in are really strict. Only about 1 in 10 people that apply get in because they're looking for very developed like technical skills and like passion and stuff like that. So you have to put together a very specific portfolio. And then the program basically takes you through all the technical skills you'll need to get kind of an entry level position at any animation studio. So in Toronto here, we have a lot of animation studios, and basically they're all filled with Sheridan grads. There's Pixar, Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon, Disney, etc. Basically all the big studios around the world. There's like Industry Day where they all come to Sheridan and like pick up the grads there. So you learn absolutely everything. So last year, we learned character design. We have to life draw every week. We learned perspective drawing. We did introduction to 2D animation principles. We did digital painting. We also have to paint traditionally with gouache to learn how lighting and shadows are affected in a natural environment and off shapes and things like that. We learned digital tools, which is like learning how to do After Effects techniques and Photoshop and Premiere and Toon Boom Harmony and Storyboard Pro and all those things. We have storyboarding class where we analyze films and create storyboards based off of them and then create storyboards based off of scripts. We have a story lecture where we learn like the principles and basics of like, your protagonist, antagonist, the climax, the conflict, all that stuff, how that works in a structure to tell a good story. And then we also have animation history where we actually learn about how animation was developed as an industry in different parts of the world, which is really interesting. I feel like I'm forgetting a few classes. It's really intense. There's a lot going on all the time.
that is quite a
Um,
lot, yeah.
yeah, I think there are 8 classes every semester, and you have each class for between 2 and 3 hours, like every day. So, or you have like your class once a week, and it'll be like 2 or 3 hours during that day.
Wow.
Um, yeah.
I was
So I
gonna
just started second year, and it's the same thing all over again. So like, the 4 years are broken down. Like first year is kind of an introductory. It's like boot camp kind of thing, introductory to all the different areas. Year two is what I'm doing right now. It's like mastery of all the areas, like further development in 2D animation. We also start learning 3D animation. Year three, it's continuation of mastering, but the big thing is that you actually create a group film with a number of other people over the year. So
Oh,
you develop the story, the storyboards, you have voice actors, you do the animation, etc. And then often a lot of those go off to film festivals. And then year four, it's obviously continuation of learning all your skills again, but you have your thesis film. So you work the entire year on your own film. And that is kind of like your thesis that you go out into the world with. And a lot of people get picked up just from their films. So that's the structure of how it works.
wow, very complicated. I was going to ask you if college was going to help you, or you felt it was helping you to prepare for work in the studio, but I think the answer is obviously yes. I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of a dumb
Well,
question now, isn't it?
it's well the thing about school is it like as any school it's a structured path that is it's set up to basically get you into the industry. So you come out with like a good understanding of everything,
Mhm.
so you can get like an entry level job. But also you get all of like the big part of being in school is just being surrounded by your classmates who have all worked as hard as you to get in and work as hard as you are on assignments, and you get feedback and you get new ideas and stuff because they come from all around the world. And also the connections you get from your profs, the conferences that come. They have guest speakers from like different studios come. So there's like the technical skill side, but then there's also like the community and cultural side that is invaluable because for instance, when I on my podcast, I often ask like, how do you get this job? And like 99% of the people say, oh, I knew somebody who reached out to me, or
Mhm.
I worked with this person in school and we've just always kept in touch. And then this opportunity came up to work together. So it's less about it to me. I'm not in the industry, but to me, it seems less about putting together a demo reel and a resume and more about the connections and who you know almost. So school is like a great place to develop those.
Yeah, and I mean, like Tim Burton and Henry Selick and many of the Nightmare Before Christmas animators kind
Hmm.
of all went to college together, which is kind of interesting. And they all networked together and kept in contact, and eventually, went on to be super famous. So
Right.
yeah.
Well, one thing that I think about now, and it's like I would love to do is, you develop friendships and things like that, but you also see everybody's art and what jives with your style and what gets you excited. And what I would love to do coming out of school is like have like a core team where we like create something going forward. I don't know if we start a studio or like work at the same place, but that would be amazing because it I something that I've never had is meshing with somebody else creatively. I like stop motion was a very lonely sport, where I was just a kid in my bedroom for all hours of the night doing stop motion, by myself, and I didn't know anybody else who did it at all. Like I grew up in Waterloo, which is not a very small town, but at the same time, like all my friends went to like business school or engineering or whatever, right? And I
Yeah.
don't know anybody that went to art school afterwards.
So I mean, do you find like you're meeting people that you might hook up with down the road or keep in
Oh,
contact
100,
with?
yeah, 100%. And that's really exciting to me too. Even just being in the studios, like after class and just working beside somebody else who's working on their assignments is like amazing. You just talk about stuff, you give them ideas, they give you ideas. Um, it's like I almost value that over the like everything else at at the school. Not to say it in a bad way, but like
Yeah.
it's amazing because you can also self-study yourself based on like lynda.com or YouTube tutorials, and a lot of people do that, and there's nothing wrong with it. I think I'm just somebody who I was kind of alone in my passion for so long that I just absolutely love being around other people.
Yeah, that is a very common problem with beginner animators who are making their own style and making their way, and they realize that they're all alone, and it's like you have a big film project and it's very hard to complete because of your own personal limitations.
Yeah.
So like having people back you up is very invaluable for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so cool. All right. Well, let's see. So I've got some more questions lined up for you, Terry. Let's see here. So speaking about you've got your work on the internet, and you
Yeah.
mentioned to me that you're into SEO. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes. Search
Yeah.
engine optimization.
So what are let's see. So what are some ways that our listeners might promote themselves in 2019?
Yeah, so engine optimization is something. So I recently worked for a software company for the past 3.5 years downtown Toronto, and that was a big part of my role there. And it's basically figuring out if you think of like Google search results, like you type in something and then Google results come to the top.
Mm-hmm.
It's figuring out how to make your own website or your own stuff the top of those search results, for instance. So that they're not buried on the second, third, or fourth page. So there's very specific things you need to do from like a technical aspect and also from like a quality of content aspect. So that's a large part of my role at the software company. But yeah, 100% you can market yourself with SEO. I don't do that as much as I should really, just because I haven't had the time because school and other things take up a lot.
Sure.
But I have like two sides of the coin kind of thoughts here because social media plays such a large role in how people follow artists and how artists put out work, and that's kind of SEO. It's not really related to SEO. It's kind of SEO in a different way. Like we mentioned before, like Ben Treat is playing to Instagram's algorithms that more people see his stuff. So there's like that aspect of it. But I think just being present and on social media and talking to people is such a huge impact when it comes to your work. For instance, like I'm on Instagram and I follow and talk with as many stop motion artists as I can. And just through that, I know people who work, like I mentioned before, at Leica, like on a casual conversation basis versus how would I ever get my work in front of them just by putting it on YouTube unless they happen to be searching for it. So if you want to get in touch with very specific people, I would say like be part of a community, be part of a forum, go on Twitter, go on social media, because that's how you're going to get in touch with those people and get your work out there. I guess this is a really long way of saying it.
Yeah, so instead of like using algorithms and trying to use like meta tags and whatever else, it's like just go direct to the source and be like, here's my film, check it out.
Yeah, 100%. And social media is like the connecting factor there. I mean, I think I'm on like episode 34 of my podcast right now, and I've reached out to 99% of the people just through Instagram DM. Like that's it. I'll just shoot them a DM and say, hey, I have a podcast. You want to be on it? And I've talked to like directors at Disney and like Pixar and Sony and DreamWorks and Cartoon Network and Leica and all these places just because I shot them an Instagram message.
So what's your like response rate? I mean, do most people, are they friendly and they reply?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
well,
that's great.
So I'd say maybe 40 to 50% of people respond to me, which is actually really good.
That is pretty good.
The people that don't respond are naturally like, I guess you could say they're like the famous people in the community. Like they're just so like, they're so high up there that their demand from people wanting to talk to them is so high, right?
Yeah.
Which I think is okay because like, to me, every job in the industry has like its value, and it just ends up being easier to talk to people that aren't in so high demand too, right?
Sure.
So yeah, it's really high. People are always surprised when I say I just DM people on Instagram. I DM people on Twitter, and that's work too. I rarely have found somebody's email, really. So actually, I emailed you. That's how we got in touch.
That's right. Yeah, I still have an email account.
There you go. So I'd say there's that side of it, and like if you're listening, please don't be scared or think you're like stepping on toes. I love to get messages, especially from other stop motion animators, because I'm so passionate about it. Like I want to see when other people are working on stuff. I will never be tired of people reaching out to me with their stop motion work because I'm interested in it. So when I started thinking of the people I'm contacting, like they're passionate about what they do because, and I can tell they're passionate about it because I already follow their work and they're there for a reason. Like they'll be happy I got in touch with them, right? And everybody who's been on the podcast has been completely wonderful and helpful and amazing. Um, so there's that side, and then there is also the SEO side of things, and there is a lot you can do. Like people are searching like stop motion video or like claymation stuff every day in Google, and so yeah, there are things you can do to help get your website or your work up higher in there. And like YouTube is like another search engine. You know, there's Pinterest is another search engine. For example, like when I was when I was applying to Sheridan, I found it really difficult to understand how to put together my portfolio in relation to the expectations of what they wanted to see in a student's work or potential student's work. There's a lot of videos of people showing off their portfolios, and there's a lot of just blogs with people putting pictures of their portfolios. But what I didn't get was like an explanation of how they actually created that. So for instance, I'd see a finished work of a perspective drawing of like an inside room. Everything is perfectly to perspective with the perspective points lined up perfectly, everything like that. It looks gorgeous. But what I didn't know is how they actually made it. Like I don't know how they decided on their perspective points, how they decided on their layout. Did they use the golden ratio? I don't know, whatever.
Right.
So when I actually hired a tutor to help me out, and when I got accepted into Sheridan, then I thought, okay, well, I want to like give back to other people who are trying to get in too. So I wrote this gigantic post giving like all of my advice on specifically how to do things, where to start, where to find tutorials on things, like everything, and included my examples. So it's like, I don't know, it's probably like 3,000 or 4,000 words long. It's pages and pages. Yeah. But I also used all my SEO tactics to make sure that if you type in like Sheridan animation or Sheridan animation portfolio, my post comes to the very top of Google search results. And so it's funny because when the portfolios are due, I can see like my page has like hundreds of views every day, and I get like emails being like, "Can you help me out with this?" And then in the middle of like the summer when nobody's thinking about Sheridan, I don't get any views. So that's like a specific example that I use just to say that if you are doing something within a very niche, like I was applying to Sheridan, and people who want to get to Sheridan are like a very niche group of people, you can do things specifically like the meta tags and the title tags and the alt text, and like making sure you mention the keywords in your document and all these things to play to Google's algorithm to get to the top of search results if you want to be seen.
Very cool, very cool. So where did you learn all that stuff? Just from YouTube searches, or like?
Well, I learned it through work, and the benefit of learning it through work is that you can take courses that work pays for. You can connect with other companies who do this stuff. Actually, this is a long story to how I started the podcast, but
sure.
Through doing basically at work, I wanted to figure out how to turn the company's blog into a revenue generator. So the company's blog was getting about 7 to 10,000 views every month. And just through figuring out SEO and how to write better topics for what people are looking for, was able to like 10 times that traffic over about a year. So, but that's obviously great. It's great. But it took me a year to learn all that stuff, and I talked to so many people, and just to figure out what to do, and I read so many things about it. But a big thing that I did was I would set up a call with another person in an SEO role at another company similar to ours, like every single week. So I would reach out to so-and-so on LinkedIn or through their company's email and say, hey, I'm the SEO guy at Wild Apricot. I would love to just hop on a call and like chat about strategies or like see how you do things, whatever. And everybody's totally open to that. Everybody loves to share info. So that's a major part of how I learned to do my role and get better at it. And that's also kind of led to me starting the podcast as well, because I'm interested in the industry. I want to learn from other people. And one of my coworkers encouraged me when I started animation school. He's like, why don't you start a podcast? talk to people, learn from them, and just post online. I was like, you know what, you're right. So let's do this.
That's cool. I mean, that was going to be my next question. So, I mean, can you tell us more about your podcast? And I was going to say, like, where did you come up with the main idea for it? And I mean, you kind of already answered that, but can you tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about that?
So I was there was a TAFE conference, Toronto Arts and Animation Film International Conference in October, I think, last year. And I just decided to go to that because I was like, I've never been to an animation conference, whatever. So I went, and I met a bunch of people there who are like animation gods kind of in the world. I don't know if you know Fred Seibert. He was there. He was
I
like
don't.
the
Yeah.
CEO of Hanna-Barbera. He
Oh,
started like the NTV like short bit spots, and now he owns and runs Frederator Studio, which is kind of an incubator for pilot TV pilots. So they started Adventure Time, Fairly Odd Parents, stuff like
oh,
that.
wow. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
so he did it. He's like a super great guy, and he did a talk there. And I just went up to him afterwards, and I was like talking to my coworker on my phone while he was talking, and he's like, "Why don't you just like ask him if he wants to be on a podcast?" And I didn't have a podcast at the time, so I just walked up to him, and there's like this big long line of people talking to him, of course, because he's like kind of famous to everybody.
Yeah.
And I was just like, "Hi, I'm Terry. I just started school. Do you want to be on my podcast? I don't have it yet." And he was like, "Sure," and he gave me his business card.
That's awesome.
So yeah, and that like if he said no, I don't know what I would have done. I wouldn't have started the podcast because then I have to start a podcast to for him to be on it.
Yeah, really.
Um, yeah, so he was totally great, and I actually published his episode as a second episode, but it's really interesting to listen to because we did his episode on pitch advice because he's seen like hundreds and hundreds of pitches for TV shows. So
Mm.
if you want to pitch a TV show, listen to his episode because he gives his best advice and all that stuff. So
So that's
yeah,
your first one, huh?
yeah, it's the second one I published, but the first person I reached out to. But yeah, it all started there, and I've kept it going every single week since, just because there are so many people to talk to and just everything. Yeah, so
That's
yeah.
cool. That's a great story. Uh, so, who are some of the people that you have interviewed, and which ones stick out the most?
Well, there's this one guy named Mark Spence, and he's a amazing claymation animator and sculptor. Actually, yours is one that I stuck out to me a lot because um, I followed your work for so long, and it's funny, like being a kid and seeing other people's work that you just think is amazing, and like never really talking to them, and then finally reaching out to them after all this time. It's like it's really cool.
Well, I'm very
So
humbled by that, Terry. Very humbled.
yeah, well, it's awesome. It was awesome to like chat with you, and we're chatting again, which I think is great, and like what part of being part of the community is all about. So yeah, and honestly, I wish I talked to you sooner because you gave me so many tips on clay that would have helped me so much when I was doing all those claymations. And you know what? Like, because people, like, I'm sure you've seen, I've tagged you on Facebook a couple times, just when people are asking about plasticine, but even just like people will, because they know I'm working on stop motion in school, people will come up and ask me about clay, and I'll be like, you know what, you should check out like this guy Mark Spess. He's got all these tips on claymation and all this other stuff too, and maybe listen to this episode because he gives all these tips. So it's been really helpful just in general.
Oh,
Um,
thanks. I
yeah, but
appreciate
some
it.
other people, Fred Seibert obviously, because that was where it all started. But
Yeah.
also a guy named Dodge Greenlee. I've been following his stuff on Instagram for so long, and he's a 2D storyboard artist at Cartoon Network, and his stuff is just hilarious on Instagram. He just does short little comics. And I was
Cool.
kind of nervous to reach out to him. Like, you know, when you like really, really like somebody's work and you're like, oh, I don't want to get rejected and stuff like that. So I was really nervous to reach out to him, but he was totally cool, down to earth, and he gave me a lot of good insight into what storyboarding is like at Cartoon Network. So there's that one.
Very
And
cool.
then I talked to. Are you familiar with over the Open the Portal Studio, stop motion studio?
Sounds familiar. What have they done?
Oh gosh, well, they've done a lot of commercials and now they're working on some original pitches. But they're just a stop motion, like independent studio in Portland. And I talked to David Braun. He was the kind of like one of the co-owners and also their music and sound design producer, Barrett Sligo. That was really interesting to talk to them because they've owned a stop motion studio for I think like 6 years now, and it was really like insightful to learn how um, they like created the studio and then they did like client work for like 5 years and realized that they didn't have enough time to do kind of their own original work and shows and things.
Oh,
And that's what they always like. They always wanted to create original claymate or stop motion shows, but like due to the nature of like keeping a studio open, you need like a like gears going of client work. So they're scaling back now to just focus on show pitches. So that was like really insightful for me to hear. Like they aspired to do their own creative stuff. Then they created a studio where they did like client work for 5 years, but even that wasn't as fulfilling as they thought it would be. So now they're getting back to their roots after all that time.
wow.
And I'm probably like majorly butchering their journey and like all the amazing stuff they've done. You should honestly, if you're listening and you love stop motion, you should check them out. They've done, I mean, I can't think of anything like specifically just because they've done a billion things, but they're like one thing they recently did was like a Rick and Morty spot in claymation, and their stuff is phenomenal too. So it's really
Yeah.
interesting to hear their life cycle.
Now,
Also,
what's their studio again?
Open the Portal.
Open the Portal. Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Another one just in the stop motion realm that stood out to me too is I interviewed Maximilian Lopez, who is starting up Apartment D Studio. Similar, they know Open the Portal, similar story, but they're just starting it up. So they've just been running for a full year, and he told me kind of like because one of the things that is on my mind constantly is starting a studio here in Toronto, which would be amazing to have a stop motion studio in Canada again, because that's something we really don't have. And we have all this talent here that's just not doing stop motion. Like I know people who are working on 2D shows, even though they want to be working on stop motion, just because there is an opportunity here.
Yeah.
So he like in his episode, he really dives into the nitty gritty of like even the business side of things, like putting together a budget and like how grueling it is and how to like pitch and like negotiate a contract and what kind of contracts that are more stable to go for and like how so because he was animating, he was an armature and kind of like a machinist type of person on Tumbleleaf, and also an animator. So he has like a lot of background in basically everything you need to get a stop motion show going, but he didn't have his own studio. So him and his friend, they started their own studio, but they were working like when in the beginning stages, they were doing 12-hour shifts or something. Like he would stay awake during the day and do a 12-hour shift animating while his friend slept during the day, and they both like lived in the same apartment, and like had a cot in the side of the room, and then he would go to sleep for like the night while his friend would wake up and continue the animation for the rest of the night. And they were doing this for like months and months, like going insane with like managing their time and getting client work out there until they could reach a level of stability. So yeah, that was also very insightful to learn.
Yeah, I did listen to that interview, and it was very insightful and very grounding in the realities of trying to make it in animation. You know.
Yeah, and to me, like Portland is where all of the stop motion stuff is. So I'm like, yeah, you just go to Portland and you're hired, right? But like, also it's a struggle there too. So
Oh yeah, it
yeah,
is.
I don't know. Maybe I mean I think about starting a studio in Toronto, but I am still trying to figure out what exactly my path is while I'm in school. So
Yeah, I mean I was going to ask you, like, are there any future plans after college, like a studio or anything that you have in mind, or?
well, so basically I'm in school because I've decided that and realized that I want to do kind of something artistic and creative with my time in my life. And school is like giving me exposure to basically every area of animation. And I don't know exactly what I want to do yet, but I'm learning over time exactly what I want to do, I guess. If I knew exactly what I wanted to do, I would just go and do it. But right now, I'm still learning, I'm absorbing, I'm meeting people. And for instance, like at one point, I thought I wanted to be like a storyboard artist. And I still love storyboarding, but I'm also realizing, like, okay, I also really love claymation. So would I rather spend my time doing claymation or storyboard? I don't know yet. And I don't have to choose between the two either. Like I can be a multi-purpose generalist, I guess, but school is kind of giving me the confidence, and as well as the podcast. Like if I am interested in a role, I just reach out to somebody in that role and ask them what it's like, basically,
Right.
and then put it in the podcast.
Absolutely.
So I don't know exactly where my path is going to end up, but I know I'm very happy with how things are going so far.
So besides being like a business owner on the side or something, I mean, like, is there something you won't do based on what you've experienced so far in college and all these podcasts? Like, is there something you'll avoid completely?
Well, I would avoid life drawing.
Live drawing?
I have the biggest struggle with it. It just goes against how, like, I work more in, like, I love claymation because you're working physically. And I like 2D because you can draw and edit, but like life drawing, you have to quickly sketch immediately. And so that's just something I know I'm not, like, I'm doing my best and like practicing as much as I can and trying to improve as much as I can. But I just know it's something that long term I'm not that interested in.
Yeah.
I guess I know I'm also not very good at layouts. I struggle with them versus like when I see some of my classmates just have so much fun and like come out with something so fast it looks amazing. I think that's part of being in school. Like I would love to create beautiful backgrounds, and I really strive to, but it's not something that comes more naturally to me like claymation does type of thing. So I'm slowly learning where I kind of fit in, even though I want to do everything. I also realize that like I will be more successful and happier doing the things that feel better for me and I have more fun in.
I see. Right, I did see some of your work on your podcast page, and it looks pretty nice to me. But
Well,
that's just my
thanks.
opinion. So,
Well, there's a lot of sweat and tears in those pieces, but I'm proud
yeah.
of them. Yeah.
No, I mean, I think you're really a good artist. I think you can draw really well and sculpt really well. So, I think you might be being kind of hard on yourself there. But
Well, gosh, thank you.
so, anyways, so where can we find your podcast, and where can we learn more about your art online?
Well, I basically just use for my art online. I just use my Instagram as the main thing. I haven't been updating my website. I don't really update Facebook. YouTube, I put everything up there, but there's a big lag. So Instagram is the
Yeah.
place to find me at. My
Okay.
handle's just my name, Terry Ibele. Um, and the podcast you can find anywhere there are podcasts. Just search. You can just search on Google Animation Industry Podcast. I think you can just search Animation Podcast. I'll come up. But I'm on YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud, iTunes, Player FM, Stitcher, etc.
Wow.
It's just well, it's based in SoundCloud, and once you have an RSS feed, that just gets distributed everywhere, right?
Yeah.
So if you follow me on Instagram, you can find the podcast too, because I put those in my stories and tag the people that are in them. So
Yeah, and on
yeah,
Instagram, if you want to find Terry, it's Terry Ibele, and it's TerryIbele, and there's no spaces in that, just to clarify.
yeah, no space.
Okay. Well, Terry, thanks a lot for coming on tonight. It has been about an hour or so. So
Yeah.
we're going to conclude our podcast. And did you have any closing remarks you'd like to add at all?
I'm just really happy you're doing this still. I've been following you for so long, like I said, and also I think it's really like there's a really great community of stop motion animators on YouTube specifically. A lot of younger ones too, which is great because there's a lot of like I know you do a lot of information sharing, and that's very helpful. So just keep doing what you're doing. It's awesome.
Well, thanks, Terry. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, until next time, thanks for listening, everybody, and see you all later.